Hey there, in the last video I made it clear that I don't really buy the idea that China is an imminent threat to the United States, at least not over the next decade or so. But what if I'm wrong? What if China really is ready to upend everything and invade Taiwan at some point over the next 5 years, the way all these US government and media figures are predicting? Well, if that's the case, then the most important thing the US government can do to guarantee Taiwan's security is get back into the Iran nuclear deal. So if China is going to invade Taiwan, it wants to win. That should go without saying. The consensus today is that the US can no longer defeat the Chinese Navy in the Taiwan Strait with a level of casualties that would be acceptable to the US public. I'm not so sure about that, but the topic deserves its own video, so for today, let's just say that that's the case. The US can't win in the Taiwan Strait. But there are many more dimensions to a potential war between the United States and China than just what happens off the coast of Taiwan. Militarily speaking, every point on the international trade routes will become an opportunity for the US Navy to choke off the food and raw materials China needs to function. More importantly, in the diplomatic sphere, a Taiwan invasion would instantly make the world more enthusiastic about this new Cold War that the US government has been failing to sell so far. There's only one scenario in which I can imagine China attacking Taiwan this decade. And that is a US war with Iran. A war like that would negate many of the advantages that the United States holds over China. It would obviously be a tremendous distraction, tying up a lot of the same sorts of resources that would be needed to defend Taiwan on the other side of Asia. Simultaneous war with China and Iran would be massively more complex, expensive, and bloody than simultaneous war in Iraq and Afghanistan. With two countries to focus on, controlling all of those sea lanes gets a lot more complex. With the US mired in two wars, Russia might take the opportunity, if not to pile in on the US, maybe to try its luck against Turkey and reorder Russia's access to the Mediterranean the way it's always wanted to. These military scenarios are all pretty grim, but the diplomatic consequences of a US war on Iran would be even more disastrous for the defense of Taiwan. Allies are essential to any US strategy against China. Our relatively small population and distance from the world's emerging economic center in Asia make careful diplomacy necessary. When we are in tune with our allies, as we were back in 2016, China's range of motion on the world stage is closely limited. China was reduced to impotently pouring concrete into the sea and calling it power projection. But when Donald Trump took power in 2017, he set about ripping this US international system apart. The way that Donald Trump blew up the Iran nuclear deal was uniquely insulting to our allies in Europe and Asia. You see, we didn't just sanction Iran on our own behalf, we also forced our allies to sanction Iran as well, very much against their will. When it comes to Iran, we don't treat our allies like friends, we treat them like subjects. Europe and Japan have become accustomed to operating in the world as quasi-vassal states to the US. But they really don't like having their noses rubbed in it. Earlier this year, the Trump administration unilaterally destroyed the Iran nuclear deal. Macron of France, Merkel of Germany, and some others angrily declared that this was impossible. It was a multilateral agreement, and Germany and France were sticking by it. German and French companies, however, didn't agree with them on that. What these European companies knew, and their leaders didn't, was that the United States has too much financial and legal power to be denied. The US has the ability to ruin foreign companies under multiple laws for transactions that have nothing to do with the United States. It's Washington, D.C.'s world, and the rest of us are just living in it. Europe remains outraged over this. They haven't just preserved the JCPOA, they have also worked to construct diplomatic mechanisms that can work around US financial power, not just in Iran, but everywhere else as well. If the United States stays out of the Iran nuclear deal and chooses to wage war on Iran, we're going to have very little support from our allies. This lack of support would, of course, transfer to a simultaneous war against China to defend Taiwan. After all of our allies have much larger economic relationships with China than they do with Iran. If the United States wants any allies at all in defending Taiwan from China, we have to get back into the JCPOA. Oh, and there's also the question of weapons. Many doubt that the U.S. Navy's 20th century weapons are all that useful for a 21st century battle over Taiwan. Modern missile technology might mean that aircraft carriers and manned jet fighters are completely obsolete. The Pentagon tells us that that's not true, but nobody knows because the defensive and offensive capabilities of our ships and planes are some of the most closely guarded secrets of the U.S. government. Well, the Strait of Hormuz and the Taiwan Strait are two very similar environments. When the U.S. wars against China and Taiwan, they're going to be using pretty similar sets of tools. Even if a U.S. war with Iran doesn't lead directly to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, it will destroy the ambiguity about U.S. naval power that is one of the cornerstones of Taiwan's defense. In a U.S. war with Iran, everybody in the world is likely to get a pretty clear idea of what the U.S. Navy truly is and is not capable of. So if the U.S. government is truly interested in keeping Taiwan safe, the most important thing to do is get back into the JCPOA. Biden has hired the personnel that are necessary to do this. A lot of the folks who crafted the initial Iran nuclear deal are working for him today. All he has to do is decide to do it. One of the most common objections is that even if Biden jumps back into the Iran deal, Trump or some other Republican president will destroy it. This is a risk, of course, but I think the concern misses some important historical facts on timing. The Iran nuclear deal was signed in mid-2015, but it didn't even begin to be implemented until the beginning of 2016. Most of the benefits of JCPOA sanctions relief that Iran was supposed to get were going to come through international banks and businesses that agreed to open back up in Iran. But because that time frame was so short, most businesses decided to hang back and wait until Hillary Clinton was elected before they piled in. That never happened. But the Iran deal still exists today. There is no ramp up necessary. Biden just needs to remove Trump's sanctions and we are back in business. Even if Trump or Ted Cruz or Tom Cotton gets elected president in 2024, we still have 3.5 years before that Republican is in power. That's a serious chunk of time. As I pointed out on Tuesday, the point of the JCPOA is not just to deal with nukes, but to build the foundation for settling all of the U.S.'s messes in the Middle East. With barely a year between the beginning of the deal and the rise of Trump, none of that was possible in 2016. All of it is possible between 2021 and 2025. Even partial progress on any of these issues would make the end of the JCPOA much, much harder to bring about. Even back then, it took Trump over a year before he could take the U.S. out of the JCPOA in mid-2018. Joe Biden needs to get back into this deal as soon as possible. It would be the best thing for the world, the best thing for the United States, and yes, the best thing for the security of Taiwan. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and please consider signing up for my email list at the link here as well. It's my only way to reach you if the YouTube gods ever turn on me. Plus, if you sign up, you'll get a free PDF essay. Thanks.